Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. I'm welcoming you to attend the webinar on the recent software judgment given by the Supreme Court. I have seen Rajan Bhai argue the same matter before the tribunal many years ago, and he was also involved before the Commissioner of Appeals, and now till the Supreme Court decision, he has been at the. It is going to be a hardcore discussion on the software taxation issue. And software is one sector where it is said that software sector has grown in spite of the government, because it was one of the few sectors which was not so regulated in the initial years, and that is why the software industry in India has boomed a lot. And now, of course, the government is catching up, and the regulations are catching up, and tax department is also catching up. And fortunately, we have the Supreme Court, which has given some finality to the entire process. I will request Amaya to give an introduction of Rajan Bhai. And before that, I'll just mention that for the sake of continuity of the flow, please keep your questions till the end, or they can be put in the chat box so they can be taken up as and when the topic arises. So, Amaya, I request you to introduce Rajan Bhai.
Thanks, Nilesh sir. Thank you. Welcome to all our participants present through this virtual platform. I am glad and thank IFA India for giving me this opportunity to introduce speaker for today's lecture meeting, CA Rajan Vora, who is an eminent practitioner and requires no introduction. For myself, it's a pleasure to introduce Rajan sir, with whom I am associated, learning and closely working together. Mr. Rajan sir heads EY India's direct tax litigation practice and is partner of member firm of EY Global, presently based in Mumbai, India. He has extensive experience in representing tax litigation matters before the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal and Authority for Advanced Rulings. His experience includes more than 4 decades in litigation and corporate tax advisory services, including transfer pricing and international tax issues. He was the president of the Bombay Chartered Accountants Society in 1990-91. He has authored several publications of professional organizations like that of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, and Chamber of Tax Consultants, etc. He was chairman of Direct Tax Committee of IMC Chamber of Commerce earlier for 4 years and is also the chairman of this committee in the current year. He is a member of Taxation Committee of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. He was co-opted as member of Committee on International Taxation of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, ICAI, from time to time. He was also named consecutively for the 10 times amongst top tax dispute advisors in India by Euromoney's International Tax Review magazine, published from London in 2020. He has presented papers and has been a regular speaker at seminars and symposiums in India and abroad. With this brief introduction, I hand it over to our speaker, CA Rajan Vora, sir.
Thank you, Nilesh. Thank you, Amaya, for kind introduction. It is a pleasure to be there for the IFA's program. As Nilesh said, the topic when we were discussing what topic to be considered for the research paper, I had recommended that we could consider this topic. Looking to the whatever we wanted to share, he felt that let us take this opportunity to also share and talk to on this subject. And therefore, I am here today to share for this. Let me just work out all this. Yeah. So, friends, it is always pleasure to share our knowledge and whatever experience what we have gained over the period of time in our day-to-day practice with our fellow participants. As all of us are aware, this gives me opportunity to refresh myself on this topic. At least when I was discussing with my colleague Hemen, Pranay and Palak immediately said that there is a lot of material which we had contributed in the past on various articles, and we could pull out the articles right from 8 to 9 years back when we had contributed for IFA, we had contributed for BCA, we had contributed for Chamber, and we could get that material available, which we could useful for purpose of today's preparation. This, in fact, is as Nilesh said, it was one of the favorite topic, and we all believed that amendment, what is made retrospectively from 2012, and the way amendment has been carried out cannot stand to the scrutiny of the higher forums. Fortunately, unfortunately, we had a mixed bag of successes. Some of the matters, whether it is special bench, whether it is a Delhi High Court, whether it is AR tribunal, Mumbai tribunal, we got Pune tribunal, we got successes. But all those who believed that Karnataka High Court decision in Samson and Synopsys is correct, those decisions we had negative feeling. But we all believed that this decision needs to be reconsidered. Karnataka High Court decision needs to be reconsidered because that's not the decision which we could stand for this matter. We also strongly believe that the way the TDS responsibility has been extended with the retrospective amendment also cannot sustain in the ultimate analysis, because that's not the way law could be interpreted or could be reasonably understood. So therefore, all these matters, including one of our matter of, in fact, two or three matters of ours also were part of this 100 matters which were before Supreme Court, and which are fortunate that Supreme Court has passed very detailed and very order covering all the issues which were there in all the matters which were there, whether it was before Infrasort Delhi High Court, whether it was before Motorola, whether it was before Ericsson's case, or before Citrix or any other cases. All those cases have been taken into account, and they have looked into various aspects as to various circumstances, the way softwares have been shared, softwares have been licensed to the various people, how payment made for them will become taxable or no. So that all those has been taken into account. So friends, it is really good to see and study the decision, analyze it, and see what is the points which we need to consider and proceed further. Since the announcement of this lecture, I have noticed that there are many sessions have already happened at various other public forums. So therefore, we felt that it is not very appropriate now for us to again analyze the decision very much in detail, but instead we thought that we'll go more to the repercussions or fallouts of this decision, which could be helpful for the all of us for how to take it forward. So with this objective, we have now made we have prepared a presentation, and you will find that there are some of the slides I may not touch it, but it will be made for the purpose of your reference. It could be useful for you when you want to see the impact of this on various cases what you are handling, or matters which we are going to deal with. That will be helpful. So that is how, with that, we have proceeded to prepare it. Now, just to you can enlarge on slide on your screen. I may not be able to enlarge because I'm not that techno savvy. So again, it might go away. So I don't want to touch it. So what we wanted to show that this is the type of softwares are being used or given license to various people in India by various overseas producer or manufacturers of software or developers of software. And then we have just given the table to show functionality, mode of delivery, use, whether it is shrink wrap software, whether it is bundle software, it is a canned software, it is customized software, or it is open source software. So therefore, there are various situations, but fortunately, most of the situations have been taken care of by Supreme Court while dealing with these aspects. So just to touch upon few of the models, single-use software, which is dealt with by the Supreme Court, which says it is a single copy of the software given to the end user. Distributor model, where foreign company either supplies the software to the independent distributor in India or foreign distributor for distribution in India. It could be through distribution channel, it will single use, multiple use, and distribute the copy. So that could also happen through distributor. Then multiple user license model, what we call it, foreign company supplies single disk containing software program to an Indian company with the right to make copies of software and distribute to in-house end users. This is again crucial because that much emphasis has been laid by the revenue in Synopsys as well as IBM's case, Synopsys and other cases, Samsung's case, as well as argument before Supreme Court. Therefore, this need to be kept in mind. Copying for the purpose of backup or copying for the purpose of user for which license is given also is examined by Supreme Court. Then it comes to customized model. There is nothing specifically mentioned by the Supreme Court on this customized model, but we'll deal with that when we touch upon as to what is the situation, because whether it will have different implication or the same analogy which is given will apply here also. Then there is a software embedded in the hardware, which is again specifically dealt with by the Supreme Court, upholding the decision of the Delhi High Court. So again, that has been examined. Then this aspect has not been examined, but we'll need to do because there are a lot of cases are coming up and which will be useful for all of us to study this model. What we call is cost sharing model. What happens is principal company or global company or head office incurs the expenditure for installation and maintenance of software system. They call it bundled software. They will procure software all over the world, whatever required for their group, and they will share that benefit of that along with all the groups, all the companies in the group to be shared all over the world. So everybody whoever wants to use a particular software, they will just access to the head office software which is put on their server or website, whatever the configuration is, and then they will be able to access and use that software. Let's take an example. Suppose let's take any multinational company in India, let's say HUL, wants to use the software. They will not procure the software independently for themselves, but it will be by Unilever. They will procure the licenses for all over whatever required, and for the synergy of business all over the world, Unilever companies or affiliates of Unilever will use only particular softwares which are stored in their server, and that is called bundled software. And they will be using those software, whether it is for creation of emails, whether it is sharing of data, whether it is a legal system, accounting packages, everything possible, everything is a systematic way. So therefore, that's called cost sharing model, in which all these softwares are cost of that software is being shared by everybody. Now, this specific aspect was not before Supreme Court, but we'll examine it, how that will be dealt with when it comes to the whether it will have different connotation about the taxability or not taxability, we'll need to consider. Now, the next is how is it delivery of the software, whether it is physical form or electronic form, and who gives the access or license key to install the software, whether foreign developer gives or local person or distributor gives, that whether it will make a difference. Again, Supreme Court has dealt with that aspect. It is not required, that will not make a difference. Then if there is any modification, upgradation, training, installation or maintenance, what will happen to that payments? Will it get covered by the Supreme Court decision? According to me, that will not make a difference, but we'll touch upon that aspect when we come to little later. And the last point in this is payment to the foreign company for the know-how related computer programming techniques. Now, there are many times it happens. A lot of data is shared, know-how is shared with the teams working in country, how to use those softwares, and that for that techniques are being given, whether this knowledge sharing or what is the training given by the principal company or the software companies to the Indian company or end user, what will be the situation for the payment of that, whether any additional payment is made or inbuilt payment is made, that also need to be considered. That aspect again was not before the Supreme Court. Now the crucial aspect, and I think what we need to, as a student of law, I think what we need to know is what is really the controversy was and how this controversy got developed. As all of us are aware, there was only one definition in 9.1, and particularly the 916B. It is income by of royalty payable by a person who is resident, except that we are not concerned with. But this had to be read along with the definition which is given of a royalty in 9.1. And particular subclauses of explanation 2 were transfer of all or any rights, including granting of license in respect of patent, invention, model, secret formula, process, trademark or similar property. Then there was 2 more clauses were added, and which were also examined by the courts, where subclause 3, use of patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, process or trademark or similar property, or imparting of any information concerning technical, industrial, commercial or scientific experience or knowledge. After this, what was happened was, then subclause 5 was added by 2002. The question was, the legislature felt that adding this all the controversy related to software also will be taken care of, including the film rights, software for the films. Also, video and films will also taken care of. So, what was amendment made? Transfer of all or any rights, including granting of license in respect of copyright, literary, artistic, or scientific work, including films or so and so, but not including consideration for sale, distribution, exhibition of cinematographic films, and then rendering of services connecting to this. So this was there. However, when this got tested at various courts, courts have said this is not sufficient to cover the taxability of software by way of a royalty in India for the licenses which is done. Then what happened was, then again we found that there is a definition which was a matter of dispute, and which is what we will be discussing little later. Explanation 3 and 4 was inserted. Now, first explanation 3 said computer software means computer program recorded on any disk, tape, so and so. Explanation 4 said for removal of doubts, this is more crucial words, we have to understand this. It is hereby clarified the transfer of all or any rights in respect of any right, property, or information includes and has always included transfer of all or any right for use or right to use a computer software, including granting of license, irrespective of medium through which such right is transferred. So as could be seen, specific explanation was added by Finance Act 2012 with retrospective effect from 1st April 1976. Now, this is the crucial aspect, and this is the controversy was suddenly raked up. Now, as against this, we have to consider what is the definition in the treaties. Now, this is as far as the Act is concerned. After the explanation, which is inserted by explanation 4, the definition specifically covers payment for the software, payment for the computer software, which has been there. 2002 definition was not broad enough. For 2012 definition, they specifically covered with a retrospective effect from 1476. Now, that is the crucial aspect. Now, let's see what is the definition of technical service, royalty and fees for technical services in as much as 79 treaties in the world. And what is it? There are more or less common definitions. I will just point out the differentiation between the two definitions, which will be important for us to understand why there is a relevance to the controversy which is started. Now, look at the Article 13.3, either it is 12 or 13 in respective treaties. For the purpose of this article, term royalties means payment of any kind received as a consideration for use of or right to use any copyright of a literary, artistic, or scientific work, including so and so, with the radio, television broadcasting, any patent, trademark, design, model, plan, secret formula, process, or information concerning industrial, commercial, scientific, so and so. So, prima facie, you will feel this definition is similar to definition in 916, read with the explanation of royalty definition, but this is not exactly same as per the expanded meaning of a royalty as per explanation 4 of the 916. So therefore, that's a clear difference between this definition in the treaty, because this definition in treaty in 79 treaty does not refer to anything connected to similar to explanation 4, which has been brought in by Finance Act 2012. Now let's see the next definition, which is very interesting. Only 5 countries in the world which has a treaties with India has, what is the wording with this? Now these treaties, for our information, our study shows, are executed or signed later than the treaties of UK, USA, and all other European countries, wherein there is no reference to computer software. All later treaties are signed on the basis of this. But thereafter also, there are some treaties have been signed, which I will point out, like Singapore and other treaties, wherein Mauritius, Singapore treaties, which are signed after these treaties, but again, they have gone back to the treaties what we have there in the either UK or USA or other countries, but not similar to the definition of Morocco or something. Now, what is the definition of Morocco says? It says starting point is same, but it adds computer software program. So that word is added in the definition what was saw in the case of UK. This is added. Now let's see the case of Romania. What is Romania's treaty says? scientific or literary work, including computer software. So therefore, as could be seen, the term computer software is specifically included in the definition of the treaties Morocco, Namibia, Russia, Trinidad and Tobago, and Turkmenistan. These are the only countries are having this definition, wherein in the definition computer software program is specifically covered in the definition of royalty, which is what is similar to our explanation 4 to 916. So therefore, when we see the definition of 79 treaties of 79 countries, there is no such specific reference of computer software. Only 5 treaties has the definition. And as I was mentioning, even after signing these treaties with Morocco and Romania, like Singapore and other treaties, Government of India could not insist on them or could not insert the changes of computer software program in the definition of royalty between the treaty signed between these 2 countries. So just to understand, amendment made in the Income Tax Act in 2012, treaties signed with Morocco, Romania and other countries where specifically reference to computer software is mentioned. But when it came to the treaty signing after 2012 also or signing this agreement, Government of India could not persuade the other countries to include computer software as a part of a royalty. And therefore, that is part 1. Even part 2, even in 79 treaties, they could not exchange the protocols. They could not exchange the protocols or get the treaties amended to include computer software. So therefore, the issue was, if Government of India could not persuade, could not change the treaties of 79 countries, and could not, and treaties signed even after the changes made in the other treaties, will it be appropriate for government to say that when it is interpretation to be made as to whether 916 will apply or treaty will apply, and which definition for computer software to apply? That is the issue which was there before the courts. And this is what is exactly the controversy which we need to consider. Now, let's see the issues in controversy. I have just listed out, we have just listed out the issues, and then we'll come to the finding. Now, as we are all aware, the main issue is when we say that computer software is purchased, is really not the purchase, it is really the licensed. So it is a license given for use of a computer software to the person who is getting the license from them. So now the question is, what do we make a payment? Is it a payment for goods or is it a payment for a royalty? Is it a license for a royalty? And if it is a royalty, under which section or which treaty it will get covered to? Then secondly, whether computer software can be treated as user for use of processes, whether payment for computer software is right to use copyright in the program or right to use the program itself. The common controversy which we always used to argue is whether it is copyright versus copyrighted article. And the classic example which is given in several cases, including TCS case, even in case of Motorola and also in the Supreme Court decision, as to if we purchase a book, whether it is e-book or physical hard copy, we get CD along with that. Now, when we use a CD, it is electronic form, the book is given to you. What is given to you? Is it given to you is a copyright or is it a copyrighted product given to you? And that is what exactly court was coming to. They say you have been given the disk containing copyrighted program for purpose of your user. And this is not the right given to you to use the copyright in the software with the hard disk or the program given to you. And therefore, this is the license given to you for purpose of using the copyrighted product. And therefore, it cannot be said you have given right in the copyright. And that is the whole crux of the entire dispute or crux of the issue, which we will deal with a little later. So that was the main issue which was there. Because as could be seen, and court has analyzed also in very detail, all these licenses are non-exclusive licenses, actual user licenses, and these are allowed to be copied by you only for the purpose of actual use and purpose for which it is given to you. Secondly, you do not have right to modify, you do not have right to commercialize, you do not have right to object code or source code. So therefore, what is given to you is for the purpose of user of that software based on what is developed for you. So therefore, This is not something which is given, but this is given to you as a product which we can use. Another examples which have been given is the software or the when you download any program like movies, what is done by you is only to use that movie or see the movie or screen the movie, but you don't have right to claim that that is owned by you or purchased by you, or you are owner of that software or the movie. So therefore you are only user, which is permitted within the license. What you have signed for that purpose only is permitted to be done. So that is permitted license given to you for the purpose of this. So therefore, that was the main issue which we needed to consider. Now, how the dispute started with? So as I was referring to, dispute started with, first was Motorola special bench, affirmed by Ericsson and everything. And there are a host of decisions which were in favor, right up to the last decision was Cummins, which was in 2019 decision was the last decision, which I will deal with that later when it to be how to use that decision for the purpose of rectification of orders already passed. We'll touch upon. As against this, we have all this host of decisions which are against. And all these decisions, if you closely analyze, whether it is IBM, Sonato, Citrix, whether it is a Samsung or Wipro, all these decisions are referring specifically to the decision of the Samsung, and only on basis of that reliance of software decision of Samsung, all the decisions have been given in that favor. So now, before Supreme Court, what's the issue? So Supreme Court, in brief, I will just touch upon without getting into too much of details. Supreme Court said there is a distinction between copyrighted article and copyright, and upheld the decision of the TCS, which classified the shrink wrap or packaged software as goods under the Indian Constitution. Then they said payment made for the software are not covered under the treaty, because what we saw the definition, it may be covered as per the definition, extended definition of explanation 4 under the Act, but it cannot be covered if it is not covered in the treaty, except the 5 treaties what we saw, all 79 other countries' treaties, it is not getting covered by the definition of software. The distribution agreement, end user agreement do not create any right or interest in the Indian distributor or end users, which amounts to only right to use any copyright. Indian payers are not required. Then the important question was, Indian payers are not required or were not required to withhold income charge TDS on the income which is not chargeable to tax in India. The question was, the amendment was retroactive or retrospective amendment in the definition under the domestic law. Those substance cannot be complied with on account of the fact the taxpayer is not expected to do anything impossible. The issue came up was, now let's say the situation, you have signed some software agreements in 2000 up to 2012. Retrospective amendment came in 2012. In all those cases, in most of the cases, everybody relying on the decisions of the Delhi High Court or special bench took a call that it is not chargeable to tax in India because I am taking a benefit under the treaty, or taxability is examined under the treaty. Therefore, there no deduction, no payment was payments were made without any deduction of tax. Now the department started taking view that this amendment has come from 2012 with retrospective effect from 1/4/76. So all those payments which are made, they have been defaulted in non-deducting tax, and therefore all consequences of 201 as well as 40A1 became applicable. 1 and 1A became applicable. Supreme Court said no, you cannot be made to make some impossible things to assess it to do, because they could not have forecasted that you are going to do in 2012 amendment and make it retrospective from 1/4/76. So therefore, on that basis, they specifically said this obligation to deduct tax cannot be made retrospectively applicable. It has a very important significance, which we'll deal with as to the several retrospective amendment, how it is going to get affected. Also, we'll have a look at it. Specifically, AR in Citrix, Karnataka High Court decision was specifically overruled by the court, and Delhi High Court ruling and Bombay and other rulings were upheld by the Supreme Court. Also, the argument was made as to the withholding tax relying on the PILCOM's decision. Again, Supreme Court has gone one step further and said PILCOM decision was applicable only in respect of a sports association, which was specifically for that section. For section 195, what is required to be seen is GE and Transmission Corporation, where it says rates of tax in force and or the TT rate, whichever is beneficial to SSC as per section 90 subclause 2 need to be seen. And therefore, if the TT, it is not chargeable tax, then it is not required to deduct tax at source. So again, the argument of PILCOM, which was used by the department, also was rejected by the Supreme Court. Now, this definition we already saw, so I don't want to spend your time. Now, we have seen this analysis of royalty under treaty as to the literary artistic work and how this has been considered by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said what is given under the definition is copyright in the literary work. So when it is copyright under the literary work, what is need to be seen is what is copyright law in the respective country, or in India we need to consider. Copyright law, it says as per section 14 read with section 52, specifically says ownership of copyright remains with the owner or developer to reproduce the work in material form or commercially exploit the same. Therefore, that right to use it commercially is only with developer or the owner of the software. Owner may outright give the copyright to somebody else by transfer of ownership. That means assignment of ownership or patent or trademark of that software can be passed on by them. That will be subject to the capital gains tax, which will be dealt with separately, which we need not get into just now. But as far as the license is concerned, it is a license given for the user of copyrighted product in which copyright of the developer is embedded. So therefore, it is a first sale doctrine to the copyrighted article, and therefore it is only user of copyrighted license which is given to the end user for the purpose of this. The end user will be breaching that agreement if he is using for more than what is given to him as per Article 52 of the Copyright Act, which permits him to do what he signed as a license. If he breaches that license, that is he's going beyond what has been permissible for him to do. And as I was referring to, end user obtains this license, non-exclusive, non-transferable, and restrictive right to copy of software and makes payment for a copyrighted article. When end user does not obtain any rights in the copyright under license, but allowed to only make copies of software for internal use, it does not involve grant of right in the copyright. It does not amount to infringement as has been prescribed in Article 52 of the Copyright Act. So therefore, when the copyright is given to somebody in India for the purpose of user for the entire his licenses, suppose he has taken licenses of 1,000 people, if up to 1,000 people if he is using, or he is saying that I'm using it for my affiliates, then all those affiliates as per the signed in the agreement, all those, there will not be infringement if that copy is allowed to be used by all the 1,000 people for which licenses have been taken by them. This important issue will be more important when we go to the cost sharing arrangement or bundled softwares which are allowed to be used by the parent companies for all their affiliate companies. So therefore, they said when the Indian resident supplier computers are under 4 categories, what we discussed, 4 categories are not liable to taxable as royalty under the tax treaty. So this was the important finding, an important ruling has been given to them, which I was referring to. I will not go in the details of Copyright Act because this is very, very detailed discussed in the Supreme Court. Those who are interested in knowing this exactly decisions, I think they should read Section 14 and Section 52 of the Copyright Act, which has been dealt with in this decision, and that clarifies all the issues or all the arguments which were made by the revenue before the tax authority, before the courts. Their main arguments were twofold. that one definition which is inserted by the royalty definition by explanation 12, explanation 4 with from Finance Act 2012, it overrides the treaty and it will apply as per the Article 90 subsection 3 read with Article 3 subclause 2 of the various treaties. We'll deal with that aspect little later. That was the first point which they made. Second point, they said that this right to copy on your backup for backup purpose or on your server is a right given to you for commercializing, because you are allowing it to be used by many other people. Therefore, it is permitted user, and therefore it is not within the definition which is it is beyond the permitted user, and therefore it is allowed to be used by you Indian licensor more than what is there. Therefore, it is eligible to be considered as beyond the license. That is number 2. Number 3, their argument was the payment, what is been done by giving it to you, you are allowed to use it the way you want to use it. Therefore, this is nothing but more than the license, and therefore falls in the definition given of computer software in explanation 4 of the Income Tax Act. So these were the 3 basic their arguments, and on the basis of which their entire argument has been there. Then the question again, as I was referring to, was relating to retrospective amendment and obligation to withhold tax. Supreme Court has gone several pages in the decision about the obligation of the taxpayer or payer on account of retrospective amendment. The argument before the Supreme Court by the revenue was merely because you call this amendment to be a clarificatory amendment, can that extend the definition, can that extend the obligation of the payer retrospectively from 76? In fact, this was the same argument which is going on in the various cases which are going on the basis of Vodafone or Keynes cases, which BIPA or arbitral tribunal has held that this is not been permissible. You can't do such thing retrospectively and increase the liability. But Supreme Court was dealing with retrospective amendment and obligation to withhold tax. And Supreme Court was very categorical. First of all, they said, if assessee is not liable under the treaty, he is entitled to get the benefit of saying that it is not liable to be treated as royalty, and therefore there is no obligation to deduct tax at source. Number 2, even if it is liable to tax, TDS cannot be, provisions cannot be made applicable prior to the law being amended from 2012. That's another important, very, very important finding has been given by the Supreme Court, which we need to consider and take into account that observations. Third thing, which argument was fallacy in the department's argument was highlighted by Supreme Court. They said the amendment is made with effect from 1676 on the computer software, on the basis that computer software was introduced. But they say computer software was introduced first time in 916 only from 1st April 91. Then why are you making it for 76? So you can't argue such a thing which is never there in the Act itself. You are arguing that it is applicable from 76. See, if Act itself brought computer software definition in 91, where is question of bringing it retrospectively from 76? So therefore, they said, for at least as far as the TDS is concerned, it cannot be made retrospective. If it is applicable as per the treaty, treaty will override the Act, and therefore, as we discussed in 79 countries, this payment made to them for the user of software license payment will not be chargeable tax in India. Only in respect of 5 countries where treaty is there or where there is no treaty at all, explanation 4 will apply, but it will apply prospectively for purpose of withholding tax, and therefore it will be, to that extent, it will be against the taxpayer. So wherever the treaty is there, treaty will override and not otherwise. Then issue also came up as to the OECD commentary and India's position about the reservation expressed on the OECD commentary. The Supreme Court very detailed analyzed as to OECD model convention, tax treaty may be interpreted using, if treaty is aligned with the OECD model convention, then treaties can be interpreted using the OECD model commentary. OECD commentary provides that the characterization depends on the nature of rights acquired regarding use and exploitation of a program. Merely by recording your reservation, OECD commentary, no bilateral amendment was made by India and other contracting states to change the definition of royalty under the treaty. This was a very, very important amendment observation made by Supreme Court. They said merely by saying I have a reservation on OECD commentary is not sufficient. If you do not want the treaty to be applied to them, then you must make changes in the treaties that must override or make amendment in the act to show that that overrides your treaty, which is not permissible because of section 90 subclause 2. Therefore, you cannot argue the definition in the act will override the treaty and you will be able to tax the royalty payments as per the amended act, which is not permissible. Supreme Court also observed when there are several treaties have been amended subsequent to the reservation expressed, definition of royalties has not been changed. Morocco, Singapore, and Mauritius. I think this is what is the crucial observation which Supreme Court made, which we need to take cognizance of. Now, which we discussed about that 195 deduction, it will apply, and PhilCom decision will apply only in respect of sports association, which are governed under section 194E, for which there is a specific section, and it cannot be applied for normal 195. And that is what has been highlighted by the Supreme Court in the decision. Now, key aspects for deliberation are like this. One of the issues is Supreme Court was not dealing with customized softwares or upgradation of software or maintenance of a software. Supreme Court was dealing with license of only four types of softwares, that is end users, distributors, or it was through non-resident distributor or bundle or software along with the embedded software. That is what Supreme Court was dealing with. But the question comes up, and which we need to consider is, will this also apply in respect of software maintenance, upgradation, and the related services, which is what is given along with the software. My personal feeling is software upgradation given under the as per the license given to them, any software person, software developer, if he gives to the end user, the development upgradation also permissible. He gives the services to use the software, which is incidental to user of software. That will not be specifically covered, that will specifically be covered in the part of a license fee. If there are no separate agreements made, no separate fees paid for the purpose of this upgradation or for maintenance or for the services, then there should not be any worry at all, because that is a part of a agreement or license which is signed by the assessee. And if you see many of the agreements which are signed, these agreements always permit you to do upgradation free of charge, maintenance free of charge, and allied services for the purpose of user or troubleshooting to be free of charge. In that case, this is not the service which is there, but the service incidental to software which you are licensed to you, and therefore it cannot be separately treated or considered for the purpose of taxability. Now, suppose if there are any separate services rendered over and above what is prescribed in the agreement, then we'll have to test it whether these services are from the treaty countries or non-treaty countries. If it is from the treaty countries, and we'll have to see whether the condition of make available is applicable in those countries, we'll have to see that applicability of the clause about make available. So it will amount to technical services, but if it is technical services not making available, again it will not be chargeable to tax in India. And this you can find similarly US, UK, and Singapore treaties, this specifically, and MOU signed with the US specifically elaborates on what is made by making available. Now, the issue which also need to be considered, and again this will become a little more highlighted for several reasons. Now, let's take a first case, is there is a distributor of a foreign software company who is in India. He is only canvasser of the product and he does not conclude the contract. He only canvases that this is software which is available and you can subscribe to this software. In that case, as per the definition of the treaty, subject to the amendments which is MLI which will happen, which will deal with, we will not be able to deal with today, we can deal with a separate subject. If that agreement is not for concluding the contracts in India, then he will not be treated as a PE in India. In that case, there is no situation of foreign company getting taxed on the basis of PE of the foreign company in India. But let's take a case. There is a loose agreement between the foreign company and Indian subsidiary or Indian PE, Indian branch, which is also concluding the contracts. Or there is a distributor who is concluding contracts on behalf of a software developer. Whether that will amount to PE or not PE, that will be the question which will now get more focused attention. So therefore, it will be important for all of us to re-examine each and every agreement between the parent company and the distributor or the subsidiary company in India, and who has a license to give that OLA to the ultimate end user, who keeps the license. Does the distributor or the Indian company have right to copy that and stock the softwares in India, and off the shelf can they sell the software? Whether they will amount to PE in India. So all those aspects will need to be examined. As I was mentioning, so far department was holding that every payment was chargeable to tax in India as per explanation 4. They never went into this aspect of PE or non-PE. But having held that this software is exempt under the treaty and is not liable to be covered under the definition of royalty, now their emphasis might get changed, or their approach might change to consider whether they will be like to bring that under the definition of PE, and therefore their income will get attributed under the business income, and what portion of income of a non-resident could get attributed to India. So therefore, that also might get need to be considered, and that we should examine. Each and every agreement we need to be carefully considered. Now, the next point which I was referring to is in respect of cost sharing arrangements. Now, as I was mentioning, most of the multinationals who are operating in India, they have a common software used or bundle of software used by them all over the world. All their companies or affiliates or subsidiaries or associate companies will use the standard software for several purposes, including cost saving, synergy, confidentiality, and for that purpose, they will use the common software. As I was mentioning, what they will do, they have the common company or a parent company which will acquire the softwares world over, get customized as to the requirement of that group. Suppose if it is our example, HUL or Unilever wants the software to be developed as per their requirement, then that's a software developed by IBM or Microsoft or anybody else for the purpose of use by Unilever. But once that software is developed, that's the software is owned by the developer, but it is licensed in a particular way to Unilever to be used by Unilever and its affiliates or subsidiaries as defined in the agreement. You will find in most of these agreements, this affiliate clause is normally there, and according to that, the licenses which are taken or bundled, which are bundled by the parent company in the overall their packages in the softwares which are stored on the server, those softwares could be considered whether that software license which is being allowed to be used by the Indian counterpart, will it be treated as covered by the definition or covered by the Supreme Court decision or no? That is what we need to consider. Now let us see the difference. Now whether a single software is taken and given to be used by the Indian company versus bundled software or several software bundled together and kept with the server of a parent company and allowed to be accessed or used as per the agreement with the parent company and the developer of software, will that have any different meaning or no? According to me, if there is a treaty country and that is from the treaty country, licenses have been permitted to be used by the Indian company or Indian affiliate or Indian PE or Indian subsidiary or associated enterprise, that will not change the character. Merely because Indian company does not pay directly to the developer of software, but pays as a cost contribution to the head office, and head office in turn pays to the manufacturer or developer, that will not change the character, and the ratio laid down by the Supreme Court will continue to apply even in the case of this type of payments for the cost sharing under cost sharing arrangement. So therefore, my personal view is that will not change the character, and therefore all these payments under cost sharing arrangement, wherever there is a identification or determination of the amount payable towards software licenses or bundle of software licenses, that all those payments will be possible to be taken as exempt as per this Supreme Court decision. And if you see most of the cost sharing arrangement, majority payments are towards this bundled software or user of bundled software, licenses for user of bundled software. And that payment is always defined. And under cost sharing arrangement, most of the cases it is cost to cost arrangement. So therefore it is easily possible to be identified. In that case, it will be advisable to take a certificate from the auditor of the parent company to give the cost sharing arrangement and how much is for each of the services which are being rendered under that agreement, and how much is towards software, how much is for other services. Therefore, this will become more relevant, more useful to identify because of the Supreme Court decision, and that will be helpful for us. Now, with this, now let us proceed further. What is the way forward, and which is, I think, this is very essential for all of us to consider from the practical aspect of it. Now, what we have seen, taxpayer it has been held that license given for Indian software, if it is coming from the treaty countries, 79 treaty countries, it will not be chargeable tax in India. Now, let's take a case. TDS has been deducted by payer, and NR in its return has claimed a refund. Now, various situations, and we have tried to list down various permutation combinations. Assessment proceedings are pending. Then what happens? Relying on Supreme Court decision, non-taxable position could be pushed for. As all of us are aware, under Article 141 of the Constitution of India, law declared by the Supreme Court or Judicial High Court shall be binding all courts in India if it is Supreme Court case, or the entire territory if it is a Judicial High Court case. So therefore, if there is a pending assessment, you'll have to make a claim immediately saying that this is a payment which have been made. TDS has been deducted by the payer. Therefore, I should not be liable to, I should be eligible to claim the entire amount as non-taxable, and entire amount should be given to me as a refund, whatever tax has been already paid. Let's take a second situation. Appellant proceedings are going on in the same case. The principle will remain same, and therefore, what we need to consider is, relying on the Supreme Court decision, we have to take up the position before the appellate authorities that this is not taxable, and therefore I want to make the additional claim, and therefore it should be taken as a favorable appellate order. Third is appellate proceedings on the different issues pending. Let's take a situation. No issue has been taken for the refund of software or a refund of software fees which has been received by non-resident. In that situation, additional ground could be filed relying on the Supreme Court decision. Whichever authority is pending, whether it's CITFP, whether it's DRP, whether it's a tribunal with High Court, any stage which is appellates are pending, even if the ground was not there, issue was not in dispute, you can raise additional ground and you can proceed and make that claim, and which is what we'll see the subsequent decisions, which will analyze the decisions which are there, which has been categorically held that this is possible to raise the claim, additional claim. And which is what the decision I was referring to. The classic decision on this point is Saurashtra Kutch decision of 305 ATR. Issue before what Supreme Court said. I think let's read that what the Supreme Court says, and then we'll go back to how it can be used for ongoing litigation. Non-consideration of the decision of the Judicial High Court or Supreme Court is a mistake apparent from record. rectifiable under section 255(4) of the Income Tax Act. This was in reference to a tribunal decision, which we'll deal with little later. Where earlier decision of the court operated for quite some time, decision rendered later on would have a retrospective effect, clarifying the legal position which was earlier not correctly understood. Article 141 says, if the law is laid down by the Supreme Court, that will go back to the origin of that section or origin of the controversy, and it will apply from that date, it will apply for that purpose. This view also has been found. In fact, the first time it had happened in the J.M. Bhatia's case, which was Bombay High Court decision, which went to the Supreme Court in 156 ITR 474. There is also an AP High Court decision in Seva Ratnam's case, 210 ITR, again very, very detailed decision. So when there is no ongoing litigation, still relying on this, you can file belated appeal, file condonation of appeal, file a rectification application, and ask for rectification of that order. And these decisions will help you to prove that this is the rectification because this is a law laid down by the court and therefore you need to follow. So whether it is in the case of a non-resident who has filed a return but not made a claim, or whether it is case of a payer where there is a disallowance made in his case because of non-deduction of tax, in that case, this claim could be made. The interesting point which is open and which according to me is possible to be argued very successfully. Now question is, the rectification application, as we all are aware, are to be made within 4 years from the date of order. Now the question is, and in case of tribunal, within 6 months from the date of tribunal order. Now question is, 6 months period starts from where, or 4 period starts from where? There is a good line of argument or good thinking which is being given in the many by very senior people in the fraternity, saying that there is under the CRP, when there is a Supreme Court decision, the 4-year period will start from the date of Supreme Court decision, and it is not from the date of original order. Now let us take a situation. Your cases of say 2008-9, which 4 years are already completed, there was no litigation pending, and this decision has come. Can you make a claim for the refund of those claims which were not adjudicated earlier or not claimed by you earlier? My feeling is it is a good case for you to go on the basis of this Supreme Court decision, and my feeling is within 4 years you can go to the respective appellate authority, and in case of tribunal, within 6 months from the date of this order, you can go to the tribunal and ask them to rectify or modify the order. In fact, one of the case, which is the next case which we will just see, Karamchand Premchand's case, Gujarat High Court, it was not the question of rectification. The court said even if 264 is filed by you, in such a situation, the commissioner is required to condone the delay, and this says this is the valid ground for condonation of delay because Supreme Court order has come now. So therefore, even on that count, they have said if revision it has to be done. So whether it is rectification under 154, additional claim before to be made, or 264 to be filed, every possible claim has to be made. Suppose by any chance any of the authority or commissioner does not allow you to raise that ground or rejects your application, I think it is a good case for you to go in a writ petition to High Court and claim that this is the law which is laid down by Supreme Court and the commissioner is not following their order, and I think you will be able to get that matter decided. Now, interesting point which I was referring to, and particularly the two cases which we need to keep in mind. Now, let's take a case, these two exactly cases which has been we were closely associated with. Reliance Communication and Cummins. Reliance Communication case was held against relying on the decision of the Karnataka High Court saying that this royalty payment is chargeable to tax in India. And therefore, consequences, disallowances and everything was made. Order was passed against them, matter was pending in the High Court. Against that, appeal was filed in the High Court. assessee moved a rectification application against that order, saying that there were already decisions of the Mumbai Tribunal. There is a decision of Delhi High Court, which has categorically distinguished and has held that Karnataka High Court decision is not the appropriate decision for the facts of this case or as per the treaty provisions, and therefore you should not have followed that decision. After referring to that decision, if you are not dealt with that decision, and then it is held to be mistake apparent from record. Look at the case. Case is held against the assessee. Based on the decisions which are quoted by you, which are not considered, and decision is held against you, tribunal passes the rectification order against that order and holds that it is eligible for claim of eligible to take that royalty is not chargeable tax in India. Department goes to the High Court, and High Court has rejected the appeal of the department against that rectification order. So that has become a precedence. Now take a case of Cummins also. Exactly similar situation had happened in Cummins case. Original case was passed in 2007, which was passed in 2012, which was the assessment year, which was passed in 2012. It was before the amendment was made, before the amendment that was decided. Cummins case was passed against the assessee, wherein the reliance was placed on the Alliance case, which was passed prior to 2012, and on the basis of law as then prevailing of Motorola and Infrasoft. The Pune Tribunal, in that case of Cummins' original order, said no, we would like to follow the decision of the Karnataka High Court and not the decision of Delhi High Court and other decisions. Again, MA was moved against that order, saying that I have quoted Alliance decision of the Pune Tribunal. Alliance decision of the subsequent year has dealt with Amendment Act also, and has come to the conclusion that in case of subsequent amendment in the Act cannot override the treaty, and if the benefit is granted under the treaty, amendment or no amendment would not affect the taxability of the royalty, and therefore they said it is not chargeable tax. When the Alliance of Pune Tribunal was quoted before the tribunal in Cummins case, tribunal has ignored that decision and followed the Karnataka High Court decision. Therefore, we pleaded that this is a mistake apparent from record, and tribunal was bold enough to cancel that original order and held that was mistake, and they passed an order in favor of the Cummins, saying that it is not chargeable tax in India. So payment made by Cummins to its parent company was held to be non-chargeable. Software payment was held to be non-chargeable tax. So therefore, what I'm saying is, these type of cases, even if you are lost somewhere because of either High Court decision or any other decision, now fortunately you have Supreme Court decision, and therefore you have every case, every right to now go back to the respective jurisdiction or respective cases and claim that it is to be allowed to you and refund has to be claimed. Now let's take another situation, and again interesting situation. TDS deducted by payer. NR in his return has not claimed a refund. What is to be done? And we will find many cases like this, and you will need to examine each and every case where the payments have been made. In our view, relying on Supreme Court decision, additional claim could be made before AO. AO might reject under Goetz case, but then that has to be challenged in the appellate authorities, because according to me, this is the rectification need to be done by him to his order. If it does not do, it is a mistake apparent from record, and therefore, even if he rejects on the ground that this was not a claim in the original assessment, and therefore Goetz, you are making a fresh claim, you can take it up that issue to the appellate authorities, and I am quite sure appellate authorities will be able to consider based on the Supreme Court decision and Article 141 of the Constitution. Next situation is again appellate authorities, pending in the appellate authorities. Suppose you have no issue pending in the appellate authority, you have never taken any issue on this software, on this issue, but there is a appeal proceedings is pending on the different issue. You can raise that additional ground, though not there in the original assessment, though not in the litigation in the first when the appeal was filed, but you can directly raise the additional ground and take it directly, and that has to be considered by them. Second case, even if you are not in appeal, but department is in appeal, there is a right given to you to file either cross objection, and belated cross objections could be filed based on the Supreme Court decision. You can file application under Rule 27 also based on the Supreme Court, and tribunal will, or appellate authorities, tribunal will be entitled to or bound to consider application under Rule 27. So therefore, before CID appeal, you can raise the additional ground, and that will have to be considered. Tribunal, you can file a cross objection or application under Rule 27, and that has to be considered. So therefore, that is to be kept in mind. Each case need to be examined on the facts of each case. Now, the last category in this case is no ongoing litigation. What is to be done? Filing revised time limit is not lapsed, claim a refund. If time limit is lapsed, approach CBDT to admit belated claim in a revised return with the refund claim in section 119. As I mentioned, also move under 264. And 264 based on Gujarat High Court decision, what we say, Karamchand Pensions case, that even 264 cannot be treated as belated, because if you made immediately after the Supreme Court decision, commissioner will have to condone the delay and consider it. If CBDT or commissioner rejects your ground on the basis that there is not a genuine hardship for coming so late, according to me, it will be wrong based on Saurashtra, Karamchand, and other decisions which we referred to. Otherwise, then we'll have to file a writ petition in the court, and I think court will be very, very pleased to consider such a claims which are entitled to the taxpayer. Now, taxpayer, that our last case is deducted by payer. NR has not filed a return income. Reassessment proceedings. Additional claim to be made in the return of income filed in response to the notice under 148. Additional claim relying on Supreme Court decision Supreme Court. If claim not made in the return of income under 148, possibility that officer will say, as per Sun Engineering's case, I am not entitled to give you the refund which was not there in the original return. In such a situation, we'll have to challenge that proceedings, and if need be, we'll have to take it to the appellate authorities or directly to the Supreme Court, directly with the writ petition in the High Court. So therefore, that all those proceedings, all those actions, we'll have to examine and see what best could be achieved to get the refund on these cases. Before we proceed further and go to the equalization levy, I would just like to pause and say something else. My feel and little disturbing news report which was there in the Economic Times yesterday, most of you must have read it. The press report, I do not know what was the source of that report, but what was said was government is seriously considering to find out amendment to be made in the Act in section 90 to restrict the benefit of the treaty claims in such a situations. Now look at the situation. Now Supreme Court has decided the matter in favor of the taxpayer. Now it says treaty provisions will override Income Tax Act. Supreme Court says you cannot be made liable for the retrospectively for the amendment made in 2012. No withholding tax provisions or penalties can be challenged against you. Now the so-called news report says that they want to make amendment in section 90 and restrict the applicability of the decisions or applicable the treaty benefits to the Income Tax Act, and they say Income Tax Act will prevail. Explanation 4 will prevail over the amendment in the over the treaty. In my respectful feeling is that will be completely contrary to section 90 subclause 3 as well as article 2 subclause 3 of the various articles. Because what is prohibited or what is mentioned in section 90 subclause 3 is subject to section 90 subclause 2, which says wherever act is beneficial to the treaty, act will prevail, otherwise treaty will prevail. That is subsection. So in loose language, what we call it, act or treaty, whichever beneficial will be applicable to the accessory. 90 subclause 3 says if there is any expression is not defined in the treaty, but it is defined in the Income Tax Act, then such definition will apply to the treaty. But this is not the case what we are discussing with. We are discussing with the definition specifically dealt with the treaty. Royalty has been defined in the treaty. Therefore, by any changes made in section 90, you cannot override, like has been done in case of GAR provisions, which is the GAR is the only provision which can override treaty, but no other provision in the Income Tax Act can override the treaty. So therefore, whatever they want to do, they will not be able to override the treaty. Question is whether they will be able to withhold your refund. I am not sure how they will be able to refund if the rectifications are passed, and these decisions which are laid down, several cases which are right from first case of Bombay High Court approved by the Supreme Court, J.M. Shah's case versus J.M. Bhatia's case, which so many decisions have been there already. So according to me, they will not be able to do. But I won't be surprised, because fertile mind or imaginative mind or inquisitive mind of the lawmakers can't be challenged or can't be questioned, because we have seen what could be the situation of Vodafone, what has happened in case of Keynes. In spite of that, if they are not learned the lesson and if they want to still override the decision of the Supreme Court and try to disturb the situation, according to me, it will be the disaster for the economy of the country. Because tax is not the only one, but these are the assurances given by the government. When the new government 2014 they came, we will not do any retrospective amendment. And if they start doing something, it will be contrary to their assurances given. It will shake the investor confidence, and it will not be really ease of doing business or tax friendly approach. So therefore, I only pray that what is reported in the newspaper yesterday will not be reality, and that ingenuine mind of our legislators sitting there in Delhi will come with some innovative amendments which they can do, and they have been doing. Hopefully they will not do, and hopefully they have learned a lesson after Vodafone, and particularly after the arbitral tribunals. The way arbitral tribunals, those who are interested, I think must read those arbitral tribunal case ruling is available, and the way they have criticized Indian government's retrospective amendment policy is very, very interesting to read. And they have said how it shakes the confidence of Indian and how it happens. So therefore, that we need to be, if the such situation comes, we'll have to take up that issue and fight it out with the government as to such thing cannot be done by overriding the Supreme Court decision by making some amendments. So therefore, friends, this is as far as the income tax is concerned. But that's not the end of the situation. We'll have to also see what is the situation under the equalization levy. As all of you are aware, there has been amendment made in the provisions relating to equalization levy. Equalization levy was originally brought in 2016. That was amended in 2020. What it says is, NR e-commerce operator making or providing e-commerce supply or e-commerce services is obliged to pay equalization levy at 2% of the consideration for ESS. That is e-commerce supply or services. As you are aware, there was I believe that was a drafting flaw. I believe that it was not a drafting flaw. It was ingenuinely inserted provision saying that equalization levy and Income Tax Act will run parallelly for assessment year 2021. And only from 1/4/21, section 10 subclause 50 will trigger to say that what if you pay by way of Income Tax Act, then equalization levy will apply. Only one liability will come, not both the liabilities. Now, with the severe criticism happening, now fortunately they have clarified that 1050 will apply, and only you will pay only one of the taxes, that is equalization levy or the Income Tax Act, and not both. Now, while doing that also, and which has implications on Supreme Court decision, we need to consider this. Finance Bill 21 proposes to clarify that consideration received or receivable for e-commerce supply and services shall not include consideration which is taxable as royalty under the income tax law read with treaty. Now, as you are aware, there are several cases of e-commerce supply or e-commerce services. And if it is a electronic transfers, electronic payment transfer or electronic transfer of data or softwares would easily get covered in the definition of the e-commerce supply or services. So theoretically, it is getting covered under the definition of the equalized levy. But it is also getting likely to get covered under the Income Tax Act till the Supreme Court decision came. Now Supreme Court says, as far as software concerned, it is not liable to Income Tax Act. Does it mean automatically, as per this amended definition of 2021, that will become liable for equalization levy? Because it says only if it is chargeable under the Income Tax Act related with the treaty, then only will be excluded from equivalence levy. So if you are not chargeable there, automatically equalization levy will trigger. So therefore, that point which we need to keep in mind. And another point which we need to consider is payment for software is not only the royalty. It could be outright transfer. It is liable for capital gains. It could be part of a business income. If it is PE in India, it is part of business income. So all those situations you have to examine and see the implications under Income Tax Act as well as under equalization levy. Now, other points which we need to consider in this equalized levy is online sale of copyrighted article, as I was mentioning, will trigger e-commerce supply and services, and EL, if such same is not characterized royalty, will be liable to tax. Non-resident EOP selling software to end users, Indian distributors, will be liable for equivalence levy. NR EOP is selling directly to NR distributor, then EL will not applicable because it is NR to NR transaction. But NR distributor selling software to end users in India, then it may trigger equalization levy if such distributor qualifies as a e-commerce operator. ESS EL will not applicable if taxed as royalty as per the Income Tax Act treaty. So therefore, if you get exemption as per the software, as per this, then you are going to be liable for equivalent levy, and you have to consider, as I said, for assessment year 21-22, amendment has been made with retrospective effect that by Finance Act. So therefore, you will pay only one tax, but if you claim exemption under the treaty, you will get exemption here. So therefore, either of the two, you need to consider and see that is happening. Now, interesting concluding thoughts before we take the question answers. I'll just summarize my few thoughts on which we are trying to cover all this 1.5 hour we discussed. Age-old controversy about taxability or payment of royalty has fortunately been settled by the Supreme Court. This will create certainty for the taxpayer as well as to the residents as well as non-residents for the purpose of whatever litigation was happening for all these cases. Payers and payee need to consider how to take benefit of a ruling by way of refund or reversal of disallowances made earlier. What we discussed in detail that we need to examine and consider. To examine the implications on withholding tax obligations under 195 wherever they are retrospective amendments. As I was mentioning, this has opened one more new chapter or new set of relief to the taxpayers that all the retrospective amendments, and as you are aware, in 2012, there are several retrospective amendments. So all those retrospective amendments, you need to consider whether all those cases where the TDS defaults, whether the 19201 applicability of 201 is invoked, 201A is invoked, penalties have been levied. So you'll have to consider and get this defense of all the retrospective effect. 195 cannot be made applicable. As we have said, we need to consider if we get out of the Income Tax Act, we also see the impact of the equivalence levy because it could be a quite substantial amount and then need to be examined from that point of view. As I always say, most of the non-resident are quite smart enough. So when they do that something is liable to tax in India, they will always ensure that price is ultimately inbuilt in their pricing to India, or they will make tax protected contracts. So ultimately what they get is net price and tax ultimately gets borne in India. So therefore, whatever we do, we need to examine that ultimately tax liability is going to be on Indian parties. Therefore, we need to examine and plan it properly. And again, as I said, we need to be now extra cautious to see that every agreement he does not lead to a P, and then it should not create more difficulty. So friends, these are some of my thoughts. Thank you very much for patient hearing. And if there are any questions, I think I'll be happy to take the questions if it is related to topic and whatever I can deal with. I'll definitely be able to deal.
Thank you, Rajan Bhai. That was an excellent exposition on the not only on the Supreme Court ruling, but you have given us ways and means of taking advantage of various other decisions to make claims of what we thought as concluded cases. And now there are options available to claim it, whether by way of filing revised returns, by filing additional grounds, by filing revision petitions, and so on. I think this has been a very innovative suggestion from your side. That will be certainly the takeaway from this lecture meeting. Rajan Bhai, I have got one or two small questions. One is that cost sharing sometimes means, though it is supposed to be on a actual reimbursement of the cost, sometimes it is an allocation based on different parameters like headcount, etc. So whether still one will be able to rely on the Supreme Court judgment that it is only the software amount which has been paid, because there may not be a 1:1 corresponding identification possible for the allocation done to the Indian entity.
You are very, very right question. It's a very interesting question. Allocation key could be different, but let's take the case of software licenses. Suppose if the total license cost is say 1 crore rupees, which has been paid by the parent company, and it is to be used by say 4 countries. When they allocate the cost among the 4 countries or 4 companies of their respective countries, they will go as per the licenses. They will go as per the licenses used or the user of that license is used. So therefore, we need to consider that mere allocation basis of fee is not sufficient, or that cannot deny you the benefit of the license. Therefore, what I was suggesting is you must take the cost, the certificate of a chartered accountant or their auditor there, what is the basis of allocation, and this is the software cost is allocated on this basis. So total software cost is say 1 crore, out of which attributed to India is 25 lakhs, which is how the 25 lakhs is allocated, and that has to be done. If that cost certificate is there, I have been able to succeed in many cases on the basis of this cost allocation certificate.
Okay, very interesting. And Rajan Bhai, this treaty or act, whichever is beneficial, we have generally been arguing that treaty will prevail over the act. But is it possible to argue the other way around? Because for a group company, tax withholding will entitle them to the tax credit in the home jurisdiction, but equalization levy, that option is not, that benefit is not there. So can a group take a view that I would rather pay tax on the so-called royalty by not relying on the treaty, paying the tax under the act, and get the benefit under the of the tax withheld in India in the home country?
Again, very interesting and good question. I think yes, it is possible that if you decide to follow the act and explanation 4, I don't think the income tax department will be anyway against you to say that no, it will not be taxable in India. They will be happy to collect 10% or whatever rate applicable to you. And if they are going to get a home country the credit, I think that should be fine for them. But once it is chargeable to tax in as a here, then you are not liable for equalization levy. As you rightly said, it is not liable for equalization levy.
Yeah. But by merely saying that I'm paying tax as royalty, will it means it will be sufficient for me to claim that equalization levy is not payable?
Because as per the amendment, section 1050 is very clear, which I read out earlier.
Yeah.
If it is liable to tax as per IT Act, trade with treaty, then equalization levy is not applicable because only one will be liable.
Okay. Because the requirement of the tax residency certificate, etc., is for the purpose of tax withholding, not for the purpose of assessment.
Absolutely.
So, if at the time of withholding, TRC is not provided, maybe the remittance can go as royalty with subject to TDS. But can the department say that yes, you have a TRC, you are tax resident of this country, treaty will apply to you, so take this refund and give me the 2% equalization levy? Because the objective was, when the equalization levy was introduced, objective was to collect the revenue in India in a manner that they don't get the credit overseas.
I fully agree with you. But point is,
Mhm.
both acts are to be administered by the income tax authorities.
Right.
So question is, if they have choice to get 10% or 15% as a income tax act versus 2%, we'll have to decide what will they prefer.
Okay. Yeah,
I don't think so. Their vision will go beyond India.
that's right. That's
And
right.
they will say, what I am going to get is important than what you get a home country.
Right.
But I think interesting point arising from your query is,
Mhm.
suppose when I'm asking for a refund of earlier years,
Uh-huh.
if I have already claimed a credit in the home country, can I ask for a refund here? I think that will have to be carefully checked by all the cases wherever benefit is taken in the home country. I think very important point raised by you, Nilesh.
Right. Yes.
Because I can't take a position that if I have already got the credit in the home country, like I have paid taxes and I got a credit in the home country,
Right.
then I can't go and say that no, now you give me refund in India also.
Yeah, that will be a double dip.
A double dip, absolutely, and which will be contrary to accepted norms.
Right. And you have covered many options of situations where the taxes would have been paid and how the refund can be claimed. I was thinking of another real life situation which I am faced with. A client has deducted tax on this royalty payment, software royalty payment in the month of December 2020. TDS is paid, TDS return filed, TDS certificate issued, and now they have come to me for a 195 certificate. So can I certify this amount as royalty today based on the Supreme Court decision?
Not royalty.
Yeah.
It is not a royalty, no?
It is not a royalty, but they've already done the tax withholding. Taxes have been deposited, the taxes have been paid, but they want to remit the amount now before 31st March.
No, I see your point. Point is, if you are paid by mistake,
Mm-hmm.
can you claim a refund or adjust in subsequent payments? You are only deducted and paid.
Right.
And that will be a situation in many cases, what we discussed earlier, that will be in many cases you can find the rectifications.
Okay.
And there is a circular that if you are paid some TDS on the wrong assumption of law
Right.
or excess rate, then you can claim a credit and the refund itself in the 201.
Right.
So
Because-
it's your type of situation, if you are comfortable to claim as a not a royalty taxability as per Supreme Court decision,
Right.
then you can always say, yes, I have paid by mistake. Now Supreme Court decision has come, so I want to claim it as a refund there, and I will file the proceedings for refund of TDS paid or adjust against subsequent payment.
Yeah, perhaps subsequent adjustment may be easier because 195 refund, there is some circular which says that if the agreement is cancelled and in some situations only the refund.
Absolutely. But adjustment subsequently by, suppose I have paid it by mistake. Let's assume instead of 10%, I have paid 20%.
Yeah, so that can be certainly adjusted in the future.
Absolutely. That's what exactly I was saying. So you can take a position. Yes, it is based on Supreme Court decision. I'm saying that it is not taxable now.
Right. I guess one minute, there are some questions. Let me see. So it is already covered. I thank you once again, Rajan Bhai, for a very detailed analysis of the Supreme Court judgment. And the conclusion, perhaps from my side, is that if they are not coming out with a amendment in the finance bill or finance act in future to overcome this ruling or this judgment of the Supreme Court, they may have to certainly come out with a budget to give you all the refunds which you have explained how easily they can obtain.
No. I think that will be a blunder for them if they do something like Vodafone they did or Keynes they did. I think it will be another blunder, and the cost of that one retrospective amendment, India is still suffering. After so many years, they have suffered. India is suffering with those retrospective. The ghost of Vodafone is sitting on business, economy of the country.
You're right. I'll request Kush to propose a very well-deserved vote of thanks.
I'm happy to see the next generation is already become active in IFA.
Yeah, we need that because otherwise it means we need to have the succession planning.
That's true.
Kush, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nilesh sir, for the opportunity. And as you rightly highlighted when opening the session, Rajan sir's personal experience with this issue has made him the perfect choice for today's session. And we saw that it's a very complex and multi-topic topic. Rajan sir expertly broke it down and into its various aspects. And so your analysis of the way forward under various different circumstances was very interesting. And I think listening to a stalwart like you is always beneficial. And I'm sure every participant is really happy that we logged in and took the time to listen to you today. So thank you so much, sir, for taking the time and the effort for delivering today's session and sharing your insights with us. And on behalf of FIFA India and all the participants today, I'd like to extend a very well-deserved and hearty vote of thanks to you, sir. Sir, you're on mute.
Yeah. So thank you, Rajan bhai, and we conclude the meeting. We will approach you again when different topic comes for.
No, I was saying, Nilesh, thanks are due also to my three colleagues, Hemen, Pranay, and Palak, who extensively helped me for this preparation and as well for researching about a lot of things which they did for me. And that I think I was able to make a presentation for because of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.